The hotel lobby was silent. Dust danced in the shafts of sunlight piercing through the tall windows. Empty chairs, forgotten brochures, and a desk piled high with unpaid bills told the story of a place that had once been vibrant, now forgotten. At the desk, the widow sifted through the papers, her fingers trembling slightly as she counted the dwindling cash in the drawer. Her husband had built this hotel from the ground up, a jewel of the town, but after his sudden passing, everything had fallen apart. Staff had left one by one. Guests no longer came. And yet, she refused to sell, refusing to let go of the dreams and memories embedded in these walls. The creak of the front door broke her solitude. She looked up to see a man entering the lobby, dressed in black, his long hair slightly unkempt, eyes scanning the room with a quiet intensity. It was Ozzy Osbourne. He walked slowly, taking in the faded carpets, the cold, silent reception, the lack of energy. Then, with a voice calm yet piercing, he said, "Your problem is not empty rooms, it's empty excitement." The widow blinked. That simple line, spoken casually, hit her harder than any debt notice or complaint letter ever had. It wasn't about occupancy. It wasn't about profit. It was about energy, about creating a reason for people to come, to feel something the moment they stepped through the doors. She watched as he moved around the lobby, touching the railings, examining the lighting, pausing at the entrance as if imagining something entirely different. Without saying much, he made her see what she hadn't for months. The potential a hotel still held. People don't pay for rooms. He said after a pause, almost to himself. They pay for experience. She hadn't realized it, but that was exactly the truth. The walls weren't empty because people didn't need beds. They were empty because no one felt invited, welcomed, or excited to be there. The widow's chest tightened. A spark of curiosity, long dormant, flickered in her eyes. Maybe, just maybe, this could be the beginning of something new. And in that quiet hotel, in the presence of a rock legend, she began to imagine the impossible. Ozzy didn't rush. He walked slowly toward the hotel entrance, pausing to observe the dull brass handles, the plain welcome mat, the cold fluorescent lights above. The widow followed, unsure what he was seeing that she couldn't. "Look at this," he said quietly. "This isn't just a door. It's the first impression people get of you. And right now it's boring." He smiled. "People don't remember rooms. They remember feelings." That line planted the first seed. Together, they imagined a new entrance, one alive with sound, color, and energy. Ozzy suggested lights strung overhead, a small stage for performers, a corner with a fun photo wall for selfies. A hotel entrance should feel like the beginning of an event, he explained, not just a doorway. The widow hesitated, thinking of her limited budget. But something about Ozzy's conviction made her nod. "We'll do it," she whispered. The next idea came almost immediately. "Charge an entry ticket," Ozzy said. "Not for the room, for the experience. Give them a chance to win something." He sketched it out. Every guest would get a raffle ticket upon arrival, the prize. Something simple at first, small rewards that made people laugh and cheer. "It's psychology," he said, leaning against the dusty counter. "People love excitement. They love the chance of winning. This isn't about losing money. This is about creating energy. Attention sells." Then came the boldest suggestion, the one that made the widow's heart pound. He said, "One lucky ticket holder gets a luxury car." Her eyes widened. "A car? I can't afford that!" Ozzy chuckled, shaking his head. "You're not giving it away, you're buying attention. More tickets sold means more profit, 30% extra. The car isn't the cost, it's the magnet." Her mind raced, imagining the line of excited people, cameras flashing, social media posts spreading like wildfire. The town would talk. The hotel would be alive again. She could feel it in her chest, a rush of adrenaline she hadn't felt in months. But with that rush came fear. She was about to invest her last savings, betting everything on a crazy idea. Townsfolk would laugh. Friends would question her sanity. And the first night, no one might even show up. Yet, standing there with Ozzy beside her, watching him sketch out possibilities with quiet certainty, she realized something crucial. The fear was part of the journey. Without it, there was no transformation. "This is it," she said softly. almost to herself. We either fail spectacularly, or we begin something incredible. And with that, the widow stepped into the unknown, ready to turn her empty hotel into a place the town would never forget. The night of the grand experiment arrived. The widow paced nervously in the hotel lobby, her heart a drumbeat of anticipation and fear. Her last savings were on the line. Outside, the town laughed quietly, murmuring about the crazy widow with a car giveaway. The doors opened, silence. Minutes felt like hours. Not a single soul. She clutched her hands, imagining the worst: empty rooms, empty tickets, empty hope. Then, from around the corner, a group of curious onlookers arrived. One took a selfie at the colorful entrance. Another peered at the raffle tickets. And then more: families, teenagers, even tourists who had never noticed the hotel before. The energy shifted. The lobby, once cold and lifeless, began to hum with movement, laughter. Ozzy watched from a corner, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Remember," he whispered, "this is why people pay. For excitement, for experience." The first raffle was announced. Cheers erupted. Cameras flashed. Social media posts began to spread, videos of the lights, the music, the laughing crowds. The hashtag went viral in hours. By midnight, the hotel entrance was no longer just a doorway. It had become a magnet. Lines snaked down the street. The little hotel, once forgotten, was now a sensation. Tickets sold out faster than the widow had imagined. Each new guest brought more energy, more attention, more excitement. Her heart swelled as she watched the transformation unfold before her eyes. Staff returned, eager to be part of the revival. Rooms that had stood empty for months were now fully booked. The sound of doors opening and closing replaced the haunting quiet. Days later, the media came calling. Cameras, interviews, and features portrayed the hotel as a miracle story, a testament to creativity, courage, and the willingness to take risks. Local businesses began to notice the uptick in visitors, and soon the entire town buzzed with excitement. The widow walked through her lobby, now alive with music, chatter, and laughter. She paused at the entrance, now vibrant with lights and colors. A stage where performers entertained arriving guests, a selfie wall where memories were being made. She could hardly believe this was the same place she had feared would fail. In a quiet moment, she found Ozzy standing nearby, watching the scene with quiet satisfaction. "I can't thank you enough," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Ozzy smiled softly, his eyes twinkling. "I didn't change your life," he said gently. "You just needed permission to think bigger." She watched as he walked away, fading into the night as quietly as he had arrived. The lobby remained alive, the hotel fully booked, the town abuzz with stories and selfies. The fear, the doubt, the empty rooms, all of it had been replaced with excitement, energy, and possibility. Final shot. The widow stood at the doorway, sunlight streaming across the vibrant lobby, and whispered to herself, "From empty rooms to full house." And with that, her hotel and her spirit had been transformed forever. Weeks after the first night, the hotel pulsed with life in a way the widow had never imagined. Guests didn't just come to sleep, they came to be part of something, to feel the energy, to be entertained, and to share the experience with friends and strangers alike. The lobby, once a symbol of fear and failure, had become a living stage. Music played in the background, performers danced, and people snapped selfies, laughed, and lingered. The luxury car, the grand prize, had already been awarded to a lucky visitor. Photos of the winner holding the keys went viral on social media. Yet the true prize was not the car, it was attention. The hotel had become a talking point, an event, a destination. Occupancy rates soared, revenue doubled, and even local businesses felt the ripple effect. Cafes, shops, and transport services thrived as visitors came from neighboring towns, drawn by the buzz. The widow found herself walking the lobby each morning, a sense of pride swelling in her chest. Staff who had once left in frustration were now back, motivated and inspired. They weren't just employees anymore, they were performers in a shared experience. They smiled, greeted guests warmly, and even contributed ideas for mini-events. The energy she had once thought impossible to reclaim was now palpable, almost contagious. One evening, As the sun set over the hotel's terrace, Ozzy returned, quietly stepping into the buzzing lobby. He observed the scene, lights twinkling, music flowing, guests laughing, and nodded approvingly. The widow approached him, gratitude and awe in her eyes. "I still can't believe this happened," she said. "It's more than just the rooms being full. You changed everything." Ozzy shook his head gently. "I didn't. You did. I just reminded you that thinking bigger isn't risky. Not thinking bigger is. You created the energy. You took the leap. I just gave you permission to see it." In that moment, she realized the deeper truth: success wasn't about selling a product or offering a service. It was about creating a stage, an experience, and a reason for people to come alive with excitement. She had learned to see her hotel not as a building, but as a canvas for imagination, emotion, and connection. Over the next month, the hotel hosted themed nights, pop-up performances, and interactive experiences. Influencers posted stories and reels. Local news outlets featured her as a visionary entrepreneur who dared to transform failure into triumph. The story of a lonely widow who had resisted selling her hotel became a viral inspiration, a case study in courage, creativity, and calculated risk. The real transformation, however, was internal. The widow no longer feared failure. She welcomed challenges as opportunities. She spoke with confidence, made bold decisions, and imagined bigger ideas for the future: a rooftop music lounge, seasonal events, and community collaborations. The hotel had given her a second life. As Ozzy disappeared into the night once more, leaving the hotel alive with energy, the widow watched from her doorway, the neon lights reflecting in her eyes. She whispered to herself, a smile playing on her lips: from empty rooms to full house, and from fear to fearless. The hotel was no longer just a place to stay. It had become a living story, a testament to creativity, courage, and the power of thinking bigger. And in that story, the widow had discovered the ultimate prize, her own limitless potential. Months passed, and the hotel that once stood as a quiet monument to loss had become a landmark of energy, creativity, and inspiration. Guests didn't just arrive to check in, they arrived to experience a story, a moment, a sense of being part of something bigger than themselves. The lobby was alive from dawn until midnight, the air charged with music, laughter, and the hum of possibility. The widow walked through the bustling hotel each morning, her steps confident, her posture proud. She no longer saw herself as a caretaker of fading memories. She was the architect of experiences, the conductor of energy, the creator of anticipation. Staff who had once left in frustration now approached her with ideas, eager to contribute. The hotel had become a collaborative stage, where every employee had a role in shaping the excitement that now defined it. The lessons she had learned from Ozzy Osbourne lingered in every decision she made. He had shown her that people didn't pay for rooms, they paid for energy, for experience, for the thrill of possibility. The luxury car giveaway had been a masterstroke, not just as a prize but as a symbol. Attention was the most valuable currency, and risk, when calculated with creativity, could generate far more than fear ever could. Social media continued to amplify the story. Videos of the interactive entrance, the live performances, and the ecstatic crowds went viral repeatedly. Influencers returned, eager to participate in the newest themed nights. Journalists wrote features about the widow who reimagined hospitality. The hotel became a case study, cited in business schools as a demonstration of how imagination and boldness could transform not only revenue but reputation and community impact. Yet, for the widow, the transformation wasn't only financial or reputational, it was deeply personal. She no longer feared uncertainty, she welcomed it. Challenges became opportunities. She brainstormed new events: a rooftop jazz lounge, seasonal street festivals, and charity collaborations with local artists. Every risk she had once feared now felt like a stepping stone to something bigger. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, casting a golden glow over the hotel's lively terrace, Ozzy returned quietly. He leaned against the doorway, observing the scene, guests laughing, music playing, lights flickering, cameras capturing memories. The widow approached him, her voice steady and warm. "I never imagined this," she said. It's more than the hotel being full, it's everything, the energy, the people, the excitement. You changed my perspective forever. Ozzy shook his head with a gentle smile. I didn't change your life, he said. You did. I just reminded you that the only limits that exist are the ones you let hold you back. You took the leap. You created the energy. You made the impossible possible. The widow watched as he slipped away once more, disappearing into the night as quietly as he had arrived. She stood at the entrance, watching guests arrive and laughter spill into the streets. She whispered to herself, a sense of triumph and clarity filling her chest. From empty rooms to full house, from doubt to daring, from fear to fearless. The hotel had become more than a business, it was a story, a lesson, a testament to courage, creativity, and the power of imagination. It was proof that bold ideas, executed with heart and vision, could transform not only revenue but lives. And the widow had discovered her ultimate prize, not just a thriving hotel, but a limitless belief in her own potential. As the night deepened, music playing and lights shining, the widow smiled. The hotel had finally found its soul, and so had she. Final frame, the doors open wide, lights twinkling, guests laughing, and the caption reads, from empty rooms to full house, from fear to fearless, and from dreams deferred to dreams realized. Years later, the hotel had become more than a destination, it was a symbol. Travelers came not only to stay but to be part of a story, to experience the energy that had transformed a struggling building into a living legend. What had begun as the widow's last gamble had evolved into a thriving hub of culture, entertainment, and community. Every corner of the hotel reflected the lessons she had learned. The entrance, still vibrant with lights and music, greeted every guest like the opening act of a show. The lobby buzzed with conversation, laughter, and curiosity. Walls once bare were now adorned with art from local creators. Every detail was designed to spark excitement and create memories. She had built more than a hotel, she had built an experience that people would talk about for years. The widow had also grown in ways that went far beyond her business. She became a mentor, sharing her story at local workshops, business conferences, and even online webinars. People from across the country reached out to her for advice, inspired by how she had turned fear into opportunity and scarcity into energy. Her journey had become a blueprint for creativity and courage, a reminder that even in moments of despair, bold ideas and calculated risks could redefine destiny. The town, too, had changed. Once skeptical, the locals now celebrated the hotel as a jewel of the community. Restaurants, cafes, and shops thrived alongside it. Local artists performed regularly on the hotel's stage. The once sleepy town square was alive with music, colors, and laughter, a ripple effect of the widow's willingness to think bigger. The energy she had brought to the hotel had become a cultural and economic force. One evening, during the hotel's annual anniversary event, she stood at the entrance, watching the crowd of excited guests arrive. Lights twinkled, live music played, and the raffle draw for a new prize created the same excitement she remembered from that very first night. The air was thick with anticipation, joy, and possibility. Somewhere in the crowd, a man with long hair and dark sunglasses leaned casually against the doorway. Ozzy Osbourne. He hadn't returned to oversee anything, he didn't need to. He was there to witness the legacy he had helped ignite. He approached the widow, smiling quietly. You did it, he said simply. This is bigger than you imagined. Bigger than I imagined. She smiled back, calm, confident, and radiant. I just needed someone to remind me I could dream bigger, she said. But I did all the work. All the choices, all the risks, they were mine. Ozzy nodded. And now you've given permission to others, too. People will look at this hotel and know that fear is never bigger than vision, that risk is never bigger than imagination, and that energy is more valuable than any room or revenue. The widow looked around at the crowd, families cheering, couples taking photos, performers dancing. She realized the truth she had discovered years ago had grown beyond her, beyond the hotel. It had become a lesson, a movement, a way of seeing the world. Bold ideas matter. Courage matters. Energy matters. As Ozzy walked away into the night once again, she whispered to herself, a smile spreading across her face, from empty rooms to full house, from fear to fearless, from one spark to 1,000 lights. The hotel had become immortal, not because of walls or beds, but because of the energy, vision, and courage that had turned a widow's desperation into a story the world would never forget. Final frame lights flashing, music soaring, guests laughing, and the words "dream bigger, risk wisely, create energy, leave a legacy." Years after that first fateful night, the widow often stood in the hotel's grand lobby, watching guests arrive with wide-eyed excitement. Families laughed, friends posed for selfies, and solo travelers marveled at the energy that pulsed through the building. Every detail, from the vibrant entrance to the live performances and theme nights, was a testament to what could happen when courage and creativity met opportunity. She remembered the moment Ozzy Osbourne had walked in, his eyes scanning the empty rooms, his words echoing in her mind. "Your problem is not empty rooms, it's empty excitement." That phrase had changed everything. It wasn't just about filling beds or making money. It was about creating energy, anticipation, and experience. That one insight had sparked a transformation that went far beyond her hotel. It had changed her life. The hotel had become a beacon. Locals and travelers alike came not just for the accommodations, but for the thrill of being part of a story. The town itself had evolved. Cafes, shops, and local businesses flourished, inspired by the energy radiating from her property. Artists and performers had found a stage, students found jobs, and the sense of community grew stronger with every event. She had learned lessons she never expected to teach. Risk wasn't something to fear, it was something to embrace, as long as it was smart and purposeful. Fear was only temporary. Imagination, when paired with action, had lasting power. And the biggest lesson of all success was not measured by money alone, but by the impact she could create, the energy she could generate, and the lives she could inspire. One evening, during a special celebration for the hotel's anniversary, she spotted a familiar figure leaning against the doorway, watching the crowd quietly. Ozzy Osbourne. He had returned not to guide or direct, but to witness the full scale of what had grown from that first spark of insight. "You did it," he said simply, his voice calm but filled with pride. "Bigger than anyone could have imagined." "I only needed permission to dream bigger," she replied, a soft smile spreading across her face. "But I did the work. I took the risks. I created the energy." Ozzy nodded. "And now you're giving that permission to everyone who comes here. They leave inspired, dreaming bigger themselves. That is the true legacy." As he walked away into the night, the widow turned back to the glowing lobby. Music played, lights twinkled, and laughter echoed. She realized that this hotel, her once empty hotel, was more than a business. It was a story of courage, creativity, and transformation. It was proof that even in the darkest moments, a spark of insight and a willingness to take bold action could create something extraordinary. She whispered quietly to herself, a reflection she knew she would carry forever: from empty rooms to full house, from fear to fearless, from a single idea to a legacy that inspires. And with that, the widow stepped forward, confident and unwavering, ready for the next chapter of her story, and the stories of everyone who walked through her doors. Years had passed since that first night of risk and uncertainty, yet the hotel pulsed with life in a way the widow had once only dreamed of. Guests no longer came merely for rooms. They came for the energy, the excitement, the experience. The lobby, once silent and empty, was now alive with music, laughter, and the hum of conversations. Every corner told a story. The vibrant entrance, the selfie walls, the mini-stage hosting performers. Each detail reminded her of the lesson Ozzy Osbourne had imparted so long ago. "Your problem is not empty rooms, it's empty excitement." The hotel had become more than a business. It was a hub of creativity and community. Local artists found a stage for their work. Nearby shops and cafes thrived as visitors flocked to the town. Students and young professionals discovered opportunities where none existed before. The ripple effect of her courage was far greater than she could have imagined. The widow herself had changed. Fear no longer ruled her decisions. Each risk was an opportunity to create energy, to spark curiosity, to bring joy. The luxury car giveaway, once a terrifying gamble, had become a symbol of thinking bigger, of turning attention into action. She realized success was no longer measured only in occupancy or revenue. It was measured in the lives touched, the excitement generated, and the legacy she was building. On the hotel's anniversary evening, the lobby glowed under twinkling lights, live music echoing through the halls. Guests cheered as raffled tickets were drawn. Amid the crowd, she noticed a familiar figure leaning against the doorway, Ozzy Osbourne, quietly observing. He hadn't come to direct or advise, he had come to witness. "You did it," he said simply, a small smile beneath his sunglasses. Bigger than anyone could have imagined. The widow returned the smile, calm and radiant. "I only needed permission to dream bigger," she said. "But it was my choices, my risks, my work that brought this to life." Ozzy nodded. "And now, everyone who comes here leaves inspired. They see what's possible when courage meets creativity. That is your true legacy." As he disappeared into the night once more, the widow turned back to the glowing lobby, watching guests laugh, take photos, and create memories. She realized this hotel, her once empty hotel, was now more than walls and beds. It was a living story, a proof of courage, imagination, and persistence. Quietly, she whispered to herself, and as the music played on, laughter filling the air, she stepped forward with confidence, ready for the next chapter, not just of her hotel, but of every story that walked through her doors. Years had passed since that first daring night, yet the energy Ozzy had helped ignite still pulsed through every corner of the hotel. Guests arrived not merely to stay, they came to be part of a story, to witness the transformation, to feel the thrill that had turned fear into possibility. The lobby hummed with life, music, laughter, and the quiet excitement of people creating memories together. The widow walked through the space she once feared would collapse under debt and silence. Every detail reflected lessons she had learned: the vibrant entrance, the interactive stage, and the joy of guests taking part in experiences that sparked curiosity and laughter. She realized the hotel had become more than a business. It was a living testament to courage, creativity, and the power of energy. Local artists performed on the stage regularly, students found meaningful work, and nearby businesses flourished as visitors poured in from far beyond the town. The hotel had become a cultural hub, and the widow had become a quiet leader, a mentor and inspiration to everyone who heard her story. She remembered Ozzy's words from that first visit. "People don't pay for rooms, they pay for experience." At the time, it had felt like a challenge. Now she understood the depth of his insight. Success wasn't about walls, beds, or even money. It was about creating energy, excitement, and opportunity. The boldest risks, when combined with imagination and persistence, could create transformations far larger than fear ever imagined. One quiet evening, the widow stood at the entrance, watching the sun set over the thriving lobby. Guests laughed, cameras clicked, and the vibrant lights reflected off polished surfaces. She smiled, remembering the long nights of doubt and the small sparks of courage that had led her here. The hotel had become a living story, a place where fear had been replaced by fearless action, scarcity replaced by opportunity, and doubt replaced by daring. She whispered softly to herself, from empty rooms to full house, from hesitation to courage, from a single spark to a lasting legacy. And in that moment, she realized the ultimate truth. The greatest transformation wasn't in the hotel, it was within herself. Fear had been conquered, vision had been embraced, and creativity had been unleashed. The widow's journey was proof that bold ideas, executed with heart and energy, could change not just a business, but a life. The doors stayed open. The lights glowed and the music played on, an enduring reminder that courage and imagination were more powerful than fear. Years had turned the widow's hotel into a legend. It wasn't just a place to sleep, it was a stage, a canvas, a magnet for energy and imagination. Guests came from far and wide, drawn not by rooms or amenities, but by the story the hotel told and the experiences it offered. Music floated through the lobby, laughter echoed down the halls, and vibrant lights guided visitors into a world alive with excitement. The widow often paused to watch, What once had been empty chairs and silent corridors now pulsed with life. She saw families capturing memories at the selfie wall, young couples dancing by the mini stage, and solo travelers joining in games and events. Each moment was a testament to the power of imagination, risk, and courage. The town had changed too. Cafes, shops, and theaters thrived alongside the hotel, all inspired by the energy and creativity that had been unleashed. Local artists performed regularly, students found meaningful employment, and visitors returned again and again. The ripple effect of her bravery extended far beyond the walls of the hotel. It had transformed a community. One evening, as the anniversary of the first grand night approached, the widow looked at the lobby and remembered the man who had changed everything with a simple piece of advice. Ozzy Osbourne had come quietly, observing the empty hotel, and said, "People don't pay for rooms, they pay for experience." She smiled, realizing that the lesson had grown far beyond hospitality. It was a lesson about life. People would follow energy, excitement, and courage wherever it appeared. She had learned that success came not from playing it safe, but from daring to imagine, take risks, and create something extraordinary. Now, the widow wanted to share that knowledge. She began mentoring young entrepreneurs, hosting workshops, and speaking at conferences. Her story inspired others to embrace fear, take bold steps, and transform their own challenges into opportunities. What had started as a desperate attempt to save a fading hotel had become a blueprint for courage, creativity, and leadership. She stood at the entrance, watching guests arrive, lights twinkling, music filling the air. Quietly, she whispered to herself, "From empty rooms to full house, from fear to fearless, from one spark to a legacy that inspires." The hotel, the town, and her life had all been transformed, not by luck, not by chance, but by vision, courage, and relentless energy. And as she opened the doors to the evening's guests, she realized the greatest reward wasn't the hotel's success. It was the knowledge that she had given permission to others to dream bigger, act boldly, and create their own extraordinary stories. The hotel had become more than a building. It was a living testament to vision, courage, and energy. Guests didn't just come to stay. They came to be part of something larger than themselves, to witness a story of transformation, and to feel the spark that had turned despair into possibility. Music flowed through the halls, lights twinkled in the lobby, and laughter echoed in every corner. Every element reflected the widow's bold choices and her commitment to creating an experience. Standing at the entrance, the widow watched families arrive, friends take selfies at the vibrant walls, and performers energize the crowd. She remembered the first night when the lobby was empty, the bills stacked high, and the fear almost paralyzing. She remembered Ozzy Osbourne's words, "Your problem is not empty rooms, it's empty excitement." At the time, it had seemed like a simple observation, almost casual. But it had sparked a revolution, not just in her hotel, but in her mind. It had taught her that true success is never just about products or services. It's about energy, excitement, and the experience you create. The luxury car giveaway, once terrifying in its risk, had become a symbol of what bold ideas could achieve. The small investment of courage had brought attention, profit, and vitality far beyond what fear could have ever imagined. Every guest who walked through the doors became part of the narrative, a living proof of the power of imagination, strategy, and action. Over time, the widow had grown into a leader, a mentor, and an inspiration. She hosted workshops, spoke at conferences, and guided young entrepreneurs, sharing her story of transformation. She showed that courage and creativity could turn even the darkest moments into opportunities for growth, innovation, and impact. One evening, she noticed a familiar shadow at the doorway, Ozzy Osbourne quietly observing the lobby as he had on that first transformative night. She smiled, understanding that his role had always been to ignite the spark. The rest was hers to nurture, grow, and expand. "You've created more than a hotel," he said quietly. "You've created a movement." The widow nodded, reflecting on how far she had come. She had turned fear into action, scarcity into opportunity, and doubt into daring. She realized that the ultimate legacy wasn't the rooms, the revenue, or even the media coverage. It was the energy she had cultivated and the inspiration she had passed on. As the guests laughed, music played, and lights flickered, she whispered to herself, from empty rooms to full house, from fear to fearless, from a single spark to a legacy that inspires generations. The hotel stood as a monument not only to courage and vision, but to the transformative power of energy, imagination, and daring to dream bigger. And the widow knew, with quiet certainty, that her journey and the story of her hotel would continue to ignite possibility for years to come.